Good evening and welcome. It's that time of the year again when many high school students and high school leavers will be looking to enroll in a university or a tertiary institution to further their studies. And tonight on the show, in a timely manner, we speak to the CEO of the Tertiary Scholarships and Loans Board, otherwise known as TSLB, Mr. Bobby Maharaj. Sir, thank you so much for joining us tonight on the show.
Good evening and good evening to the viewers as well.
And so, first of all, let's talk about some of the information that high school leavers should know before they approach TELS.
The most important thing for them to know at this moment is that we have already opened the applications on 27th of June. Applications will close on 15th December at 11:59 p.m. Now, those who are planning to apply to start their studies from academic term 1 of 2020, they must apply online using our online application portal by visiting our website, which is www.tslb.com.fj, and they must do that before 15th of December. Now, many students will be at the moment trying to work out how do they apply because the year 13 results are not out, and likewise the universities haven't given them an offer letter to say that they've been accepted for a particular program at a particular university. Now, in our advertisements that we've been placing the local dailies, plus we'll be going on air from tomorrow as well in terms of our application advertisements, we are advising the students that they need to apply online. Currently, they'll have their year 13 results and offer letters which are not with them. They can still apply. The application portal will still be open for them post 15th of December to do two things, which is update their year 13 or year 12 results, as well as upload their offer letter. So there is no need for them to say or to get into the panic mode to say that applications are closing on 15th of December and the results are not out and offer letters are still not with them. So they can still apply. The portal will still be open for them and they can update their applications after 15th of December 2019. Now, in terms of year 13 results, even if they are not able to submit their results to TSLB on a timely basis, we have made arrangement with Ministry of Education, Heritage and Arts, whereby we will be obtaining all results for all year 13 and year 12 results directly from Ministry of Education, Heritage and Arts and updating our database. So even if they do not update their results, we will be able to update that from TSLB's end and still process their applications.
You know, we've been talking about how a lot of the application process is moving online. Is this something that you've seen to be beneficial for students?
Yes, definitely, because the way we have designed our online application portal is self-guiding for the students, because when they log into our website, from step 1 to step 6, all the explanations are there. We have also uploaded a very detailed handbook for the students to make reference to. We also have got videos on the online application, a step-by-step guide on our Facebook account. So the students can either download the handbook from our website, download the video from our Facebook account, or even if they do not have access to the handbook or the videos, once they log into our system, all the fields that they have to fill are watermarked. For example, if there is a provision for them to enter the date of birth, there's a date watermark to say in what particular format are they supposed to enter that. If in case they are not filling it correctly, there'll be a feedback given to them in terms of what they are entering and what the requirements are. So it's a self-guiding system, and we had launched, let's say, phase 1 of our online application system at the beginning of last year. So we have tested that for the 2019 applications. We had received close to 10,000 applications online from 2018 students who were looking at starting their studies in 2019. So it's a tester system. And if in case they are still having difficulties, because we have worked with Ministry of Education, Heritage and Arts to identify schools or students who may not have access to internet. So what we have done, we have emailed the application forms and the entire package to the school principals so they can obtain a copy of the application form and all the other requirements from the school principals, fill the form and either submit it to TSLB through their schools, or they can easily lodge a copy at our Lautoka Lambasa or Sufa office. And once they lodge the hard copies of the applications, we have got the data input staff who will basically create their online application, will basically transfer all the documents they've given to their online application and then give them a call to advise them what their usernames are and what their temporary passwords are. So if in case they are still having difficulties, they can submit their manual forms and we'll take care of it.
I mean, the idea that, and I know this existed a while ago, that if you want to make an application, if you want that application to be successful, you have to do it in person. You have to, if you're living outside of Suva, you have to travel all the way to Suva, queue up outside the TSLB building in a queue that will probably take you all day. But that's not necessary, right? So you can do the entire, all of the components of the application can be done online.
Yeah, the entire application can be done online, and post the application, even their processing will be done online. So the system that we have developed is somewhat like telling the students to say, well, you can be at your home, put in your application, do not come to TSLB office, because we don't want the students to be spending hours at TSLB, because we are paying for them to be at the universities. So they can apply online, and once the year 13 and year 12 results are with TSLB, we'll also be processing the applications online. So once we process the applications, a copy of their offer letter and bond form will also be sent to them via their email address, and they can always log into their TSLB account and download a copy from their landing page, or what we call as the profile page. So apart from application, they can also get their bond form, offer letter online. Once they have downloaded and printed their offer letter and bond form, they can basically sign, scan and upload their bond form and offers online. And once we have assessed the bond form and offer letter, we'll again issue them with the confirmation letter online. So the entire process from application to confirmation is online. What it means is, once the students put in their application, they have to wait at their home, and they have to keep on checking the email address that they've used to register with us. And also they can always log into their TSLB account and check. So they can apply from home, print their confirmation letters from their home, and start their classes at the university. So there's no need for any student who has used the online application system to visit TSLB office. In case they are having issues, again, they don't have to come to Suva now. For example, if they are based in the Northern Division, whatever we are doing at HQ is also done by our Lambasa office. So they can basically visit our Lambasa office, and all the Western students, we are also encouraging them that we have got our office in Lautoka. They can basically be using that, because whatever they need to be assisted for, whether it's an online application, whether it's to do with their offer letters and bond forms, confirmation letters, even to the extent of processing their tuition and allowances, are done by our Lautoka and Lambasa office also. So if you are from Vanua Levu, we'll encourage the parents and the students to use our facilities in Lambasa. If you are from the Western Division, you can use our facilities in Lautoka.
So you've got checks and balances in place to make sure that there's no one that is cheating the system, but there is a possibility that sometimes there are some that may slip through the cracks. What does the TSLB do in cases where you receive fraudulent applications?
Let's say two of the major controls that we have in place now are, one, there could have been a possibility of the students playing around with their year 12 and year 13 results. So what we are doing now is, we are not banking on the results submitted by the students. We obtain all results directly from Ministry of Education. So if there was a chance of them, let's say, manipulating the results, that is taken care of by obtaining the results directly from Ministry of Education. The other possibility would have been in terms of declaring the parental income. So we now have a system which is basically linked with Fiji Revenue and Customs Services. As soon as the students put in their parents' TIN number, we are able to vet their declared income with the FRCS. So those were the two major ones, and they've been taken care of by the online application system.
And when we come back from break, we'd like to talk about the relationship between TSLB and FRCS and how that's sort of developed over the years. Stay with us. We'll be right back after a short break. So I know for a fact that FRCS does a lot of work in conjunction with TSLB, and I'd like to know more about what areas in specific you work with FRCS on.
There was an amendment to the Tertiary Scholarship and Loans Act done and effective from 1st of August 2017. So what has happened now is the roles are clearly demarcated in the legislation. So what we do at TSLB is basically receive all applications. We assess applications in terms of the eligibility criteria, the requirements from the students. We decide in terms of which student is getting which awards, whether it's a loan scheme or the scholarship scheme, the allowances rates, the eligibility. And we make payments to all students for their allowances and to the universities for the tuition and accommodation. Now, that's where our role principally ends in terms of administering the loan scheme and the scholarship. So we receive applications, we process tuition, and we also process allowances. Now, as soon as we have made any payments to the students or to the universities, the payment details from our system is also then transferred to FRCS system in terms of how much we have paid for which student under which scheme for which term. Now that information is then transferred to FRCS, and the role of FRCS then is once the students graduate, once they have secured an employment, FRCS basically contacts them for their bond service if they are the scholarship recipients, and for loan repayment if in case they were on the tertiary education loan scheme or what is commonly known as TELS. Now, as soon as payments are updated by FRCS, because we make payments to the students, students make payments to FRCS for the loan repayments or for the bond service. We are now working with FRCS in terms of integrating the two systems to say, well, on a real-time basis, as we make payments, FRCS can see it, and as soon as students make repayments, we can see it, so that either through our online application system and the website or through the FRCS website, the students can know at any point in time how much was paid to them and how much still owed by them in terms of repayments or bond service. One of the reasons why we want to do that is also to ensure there is absolute transparency in the way these schemes are administered, because we need the students to know what are we paying them for. For example, if you are paying them for a bus fare, they need to know on which date how much was transferred to their account. Or let's say if you are paying them for the hostel fees, the students need to know that for this particular term, this particular year, if venue, let's say, or USP was paid X dollars from TSLB for their allowances or tuition, because as I've said, tuition and allowances for hostel and meals, we pay directly to the universities. So we are developing a system to say, well, as soon as we make payments, students can go to our website and say, well, let me check how much did TSLB pay, right? Also in terms of, let's say, bus fare, because we are now disbursing all bus fare allowances through e-ticketing system. So the students can basically say, well, if TSLB has transferred X dollars to their account, they know that they now need to go to Vodafone outlets and tap their cards to basically redeem their balances. So that's what we are developing. And for anyone then that wishes to travel outside Fiji, they have to basically visit FRCS. Of course, we work with them in terms of confirming the debt amounts, but travel releases are now administered by Fiji Revenue and Customs Services as well. And if a student has fully saved the scholarship bond period or has fully paid the loan that they borrowed for their studies, then FRCS also issues them with the bond clearance letter, which means they are absolved from any liability to the Fijian government or let's say the taxpayers of the country.
So Ziad, you're a university student, and if you were to make an application to travel overseas, you would of course have to liaise with TELS and also, sorry, the TSLB and also FRCS. Is there any cases that you've come across where students abscond from the country and not repay their bond, or are there any measures in place to ensure that the money is recovered?
To be honest, the past practices, when I say past practices, these are mostly the former schemes, which is the multi-ethnic affairs awards, the Public Savings Commission scholarships, or the former Fijian affairs, now Aitokai affairs scholarships. There were opportunities for the students to slip out of the country without repaying what they had borrowed from the Fijian government, or to leave the country without saving the scholarships bond. But another new schemes that we are administering, which are all the TELS scheme, the scholarship scheme, the requirements are as soon as the awards are confirmed, which means as soon as we have issued them with the confirmation letter post the bond form and the offer letter, their name gets listed on the immigration controversial list. Right? Now, if the name is listed on the controversial list, what it means is the student cannot leave the country for whatever the reasons are until they have obtained proper travel release from Fiji Revenue and Customs Services. Now, to obtain the travel release from FRCS, there are certain requirements. For example, the student has to fill in the appropriate forms. They must ensure that they are providing appropriate securities to FRCS, and these are mostly in the form of 2 guarantors. The guarantors will have to be in Fiji during the period the student is absent from the country, right? And the guarantors will have to be someone who's suitable in that sense that the undertaking from the guarantors is that if a student, let's say, is traveling for 2 weeks, the guarantor says, well, the student will be out of country from date A to date B. If the student fails to come back to the country on date B, it's the guarantors who are then required to pay back on behalf of the students. So there are check and balances in place. there is very little chances or almost none now that the students can leave the country without FRCS approval.
But that's not
I've
a
been,
deterrent to a student wanting to leave. For example, at the moment we've got the summer break that's going on for most that are under the scheme. If they do wish to travel for medical purposes or for holiday purposes, they can still apply and
Yes.
get their applications processed and leave.
Yes. With FRCS approval, and it's not a very tedious process because the turnaround that FRCS has advertised in the local media is about 7 days. Now, when they say 7 days, remember that's the worst case scenario, because if the students are putting in the application with all the requirements, then the process could be shorter. So there's nothing stopping anyone from leaving the country, whether it's for holiday purposes or whether it's to visit someone for medical grounds, or let's say maybe possibly for someone to go and attend the trials, let's say for rugby or soccer overseas. So there's nothing stopping them as far as they do the right thing. And the right thing is that at least 7 days prior to your planned departure, they must visit FRCS, they must fill in the form, they must submit the requirements, and they must produce 2 guarantors who can basically undertake to say, if you don't come back, we are here to take care of the Fijian debt.
Right. I've been through the process. I'll let you know it's not an easy process. You have to do quite a bit of running around to ensure that you've got all the right documents. But I guess that's a measure that's in place for a reason. And I've been stopped at customs as well while trying to leave the country. Because as soon as you give your passport to customs, there's a red flag that comes up on the system. And if you want to make it past customs, you need to show them the travel release letter, and then they'll make some calls and confirm that you actually have gotten the travel release from FRCS. So it is a system that works, and we'll carry on the conversation on overseas travel when we come back from our break. Stay with us. So we want to know what the possibility is of someone going overseas to further their education and making an arrangement with FRCS hotels to have repayments done at a particular interval. Let's say I finished my undergrad level and I had a good enough academic record to qualify for an overseas scholarship. But for some reason, I can't pay back the amount right now, but I don't want to miss out that opportunity to study overseas. What can TELS do, or what can FRCS do to accommodate that particular student?
We have had cases in the past because there are a lot of students who do not want to stop their career progression or their academic progression at the bachelor's level. So we have students who have applied for scholarships and they have secured scholarships, and they are able to make arrangements, let's say for study purposes. There is a strong possibility that they'll be granted release without having to pay anything, because then what happens is that their bond deferment or loan repayment gets deferred. So if it's for study purposes, the students have that luxury of basically seeking from FRCS for their deferment of their bond or loan repayment. And once they come back after, let's say, upgrading their qualification under foreign government scholarships, they can always start saving or repaying their debt. So we have had cases and they have been granted approval for study purposes. There is absolutely no restrictions.
And what about work purposes? Let's say you want to make an arrangement with FRCS, and the arrangement is such that you will go work and you'll make payments from overseas. Is that possible? Is it possible to do that?
Those type of cases, I would assume, would be dealt by FRCS on a case-by-case basis, because, as I've said, when you look at the dollar value that we're investing on the student studies is quite huge, right? We're no longer in those era that there would be an allocation for 20-25 million for tertiary education. Let's say if you look at the 2019-20 financial year, just for 12 months, there is an allocation of 181.83 million to be used for funding students' studies. So I'm sure, let's say, if the person who is planning to go and work overseas and repay the Fijian government what is rightfully due to the Fijian government, if they provide all the appropriate sureties and securities, they may be considered for that particular option. But as I've said, it is going to be worked on a case-by-case basis by FRCS.
Let's look at the repayment system that's in place right now. At the moment, there's also a possibility of your bond or your repayment being waived off if you make regular payments and if you do it consistently. What about instances where there are people who are still misinformed about the interest rate on the payment?
Yeah, I think there has been a lot of misinformation about the interest rate, because a lot of them are confusing the repayment rate with the interest rate.
Right.
Now, for the scholarship scheme, remember, because it's not a loan scheme, there is absolutely nothing to fear about in terms of repayment, because the only requirement for the graduates is to come back and serve the country for a period which is 1.5 times the duration of their studies. What it means is, let's say if somebody has been given a scholarship for 3 years, post-graduation, what they need to do is serve the country for 4.5 years. If somebody has been given a scholarship for 6 years, they're required to serve the country for 9 years. Now, for the loan scheme, the interest rate that we have is very minimal. For example, if any applicant whose parental income, the combined parental income is less than 25,000, the lending is absolutely interest-free. There's no interest charged. Now, if the interest or if the income for the parents is between 25,000 to 50,000, the interest rate is 0.5%. If the applicant's combined parental income is between 50,000 and 100,000, the interest rate is pegged at 1% fixed. And if the applicant's interest income is above 100,000, the interest rate is 2%. So the interest rate in no circumstances is above 2%. And remember, these are applied on a simple interest basis, which means it's not applied on your recurring balances. It's just whatever you borrow times that interest rate is what you have to pay back. So the interest rate maximum is 2%. Let's say if you look at our records for the last 6 years, almost 99% of our loan recipients are those whose combined parental income falls below 25,000. Right? So there aren't too many in their bracket who are actually paying the interest. Now, as I've said, there's a confusion between the interest rate and the loan repayment rate. When someone talks about 20%, these are not the interest rate. This is the loan repayment rate. Once you graduate and once you get into employment, I think there's another misconception that as soon as you graduate, you have to start repaying. No, the requirements are you graduate until you get your paid employment. You don't pay anything. So let's say if you have graduated and for some reason you are unemployed for 6 months, in that 6 months, there's no requirement for you to pay even a single cent back to the Fijian government.
Just to clarify, that particular period of time where the student is unemployed, there's no interest that is added onto the principal amount?
Nothing happens. Their amount on the date of graduation doesn't change irrespective of the amount of time they are taking to pay back and the amount they are paying back. So at the graduation date, the principal plus interest is calculated. Nothing is added subsequent to that.
And you spoke about rumors and misconceptions. Since the application season has begun, you might have noticed, as we have as well, on social media, typical Fijian fashion, there's rumors going around about TEL's applications. There's a rumor about a limited number of applications that are available to students, more criteria that has been added, making it difficult for students to access these loans. But that's, I mean, you don't
Could you
agree
just clarify some of those for us,
I think
please?
you have rightfully said that these are rumors and they will remain as rumors, because if you look at it, we had 950 national toppers local scholarship in the last financial year. We're still maintaining 950. We had 20 scholarships for students who want to go and study overseas. We have maintained that at 20, so there's no change in the number of scholarships. There's no change in the categories that we have. The 12 categories are still there. There's no limitations in terms of where the students can study. The conditions are still the same as the previous financial year. Even for the loan scheme, there hasn't been any changes strictly to the loans eligibility criteria. Of course, for those who would have read or heard in the last budget announcement, the only restrictions that we have imposed are on the USP Pacific TAFE programs, and there's a reason for it, right? The reason why we have ceased funding for USP Pacific TAFE program, except for the early childhood program, is what we noted is, let's say, USP Pacific TAFE used to offer 2-year diploma, level 5 in accounting, let's say in business management, in human resource management. Now, prior to that year, there was also an announcement to say, well, if you are starting with a certificate, you want to upgrade to a diploma, TSLB will fund for it. If you are a diploma holder, you want to go to the bachelor's degree, TSLB will again fund for it. So there is no restriction, let's say, in terms of saying, well, we are funding one qualification and that's it. If you are starting with a certificate, you can upgrade to diploma, and if you have finished your diploma, we'll keep you funding you up to the bachelor's degree. Now, the Pacific TAFE programs, unfortunately, apart from the early childhood program, you spend 2 years at Pacific TAFE. You want to do a degree, almost all your courses that you have done at the diploma level, none were cross-credited or credit transferred. And that's one of the reasons we have been talking with the USP Pacific TAFE to say, we need to change that idea, because we can't have 2 years program of studies almost going to a waste when the student wants to do a degree program. So that's the only change we have done. Remember, it's again to protect the interest of the students, because otherwise what happens is, normally a degree takes 3 years. Post-diploma, in most of the universities, even it's an international practice that you may have to do another 1.5 years to get your degree. Now, the moment you do 2 plus another 3 years for degree, the student loan portfolio would increase significantly. So it's more so to protect the students than anyone else. So it's a decision that was made in the interest of the students themselves.
And there was also an announcement about no more funding for foundation studies, right?
Foundation studies is something that we have never funded. The announcement, and of course, but this was done with proper assessment by TSLB, is those students who are applying for the National Topper Scholarship, there were 2 routes. One, you do year 13, and the other one was you do foundation studies, and you can all be eligible for the National Topper Scholarship. Now, what you will find that mostly the economically disadvantaged students will always be sticking to year 13, right? And the parents who have the means to pay for their students' studies would put them in the foundation studies. Now, we did an assessment in terms of the last 4 to 5 years, and what we noted is that the numbers that we are getting from the foundation studies was increasing, and the students were working hard. And of course, the other problem with the foundation studies that we saw was, in foundation studies, you do courses for a semester, and you get assessed. When you move to the second semester, what you have done in semester 1 was not even assessed. Now, year 13 students, remember, they sweat for throughout the year. Whatever they have done on the first day can also be examined. So in terms of, let's say, comparison, it was not a like-for-like comparison. So one was that foundation studies slowly would have become something for the elites. Right? The scholarship that we are administering is basically saying, well, it's based on the principle of equity. Everyone should be put on the same platform, and you all compete on the level playing field. And on merit, you should attract the scholarship. So what we have done is, for those who are already into the foundation studies, they can't wind back their clock. So we have said, the ones that are completing their foundation studies by the end of this year, they'll be considered for the National Topper Scholarship for next year. But from those who are going to get enrolled for the foundation studies from 2021 onwards, we will not be considering them for the National Topper Scholarship. If they want, they can still apply for the loan scheme and pursue their dream qualification. So it would be appropriate for those who are doing year 12 this year to take note that if you are planning to get a National Topper Scholarship, make use of the Fijian government's free education that is already there for year 13.
Okay. Stay with us. We'll be back right after a short break. Mr. Maraj, let's talk about students pursuing their dream qualifications. Now, if you have, if you're eligible for, let's say, the National Topper Scheme, you receive the mark, and you'll make your application and you'll give your preference for what program you want to undertake. But that's not necessarily the program that you'll receive, right?
There are a couple of things that happens, let's say. In terms of our online application system, the students are not able to apply for anything that is outside our advertised priority area for the following year. The online application system is based on the drop-down menu. So if you are selecting a program or a university, if it's not there, what it means is for the coming year, we're not funding that program. Now, when the students are applying, they feel 3 choices: choice 1, choice 2, and choice 3, right? Now, these choices, once we get the year 13 results, what we do is we rank the students nationally. For example, we obtain the entire database for year 13 from Ministry of Education, Heritage and Arts, and the system then ranks the students from highest to lowest marks. So if you've got 950 scholarships, the system locks where the 950th scholarship falls. Now, in the past, there was a issue that because it was processed manually, there may have been students who may have unintentionally missed out because possibly their scholarship application came in late. They may have applied for a priority area for which the quota was already full, because each of these areas have got a quota, right? Now, what happens now is, once we rank the students, there's no one from TSLB who has a say in terms of who's getting it and who's not, because if you are in the top 950 based on year 13 results, that's where the system locks you, right? Then we start distributing the scholarships for categories, right? Because at times, let's say, somebody may have applied, let's say, to do MBBS at FNU as choice number 1, right? Now, FNU may not give them an offer letter for choice number 1 because they may not have either one met the minimum cutoff mark that is required by FNU. Maybe their subject combinations are not suiting what is required for MBBS programs. Now, if that is the case, and if you are falling into our 950 top ranked students nationally, we then consider there is choice 2, right? And if 1 and 2 are not possible, we consider choice 3 as well. So basically, if you have got a choice 1, 2, and 3 that falls in the priority area, and if you get accepted in any of those 3, mathematically you are in for the scholarships. But if it's not listed in the priority areas, or if it's not in the program that you applied for, if you do not get an offer letter, because one of the things that we have heard a number of people saying in the past is that my son or daughter had a higher mark, he or she did not get the scholarship, but his or her friend with lower marks has got the scholarship. Now, it's not that there's something wrong or we are doing something wrong with that, because again, as I've said, let's say if you look at MBBS at FNU, you don't get a place if your mark is not above 340, right? Whereas a friend of this particular applicant could have got 320 and had applied for accounting and economics, right? So on one hand, maybe a person with 340 adamant to do MBBS would not get a scholarship because FNU or Unifiji, let's say, has not accepted them, right? On the other hand, because there is another applicant with 320 and there are a number of scholarships in the commerce category, maybe they've secured a place, so they get a scholarship at 320. Right? So it's nothing in terms of saying there is any form of biasness in the assessment. It's just the priority area they have applied for, and then also there are certain areas in which the student's interest is very low. For example, out of the 12 categories, one of the very significant priority areas is agriculture, right? But not too many applicants over the years have been for the agriculture award. So when you are ranking, let's say, if the highest mark in Fiji is 385, when you go down, maybe if you are 30 scholars in the agriculture category, the 30th person is 301, right? Whereas for MBBS, because there is so much interest, when you start ranking, and let's say FNU, let's say if they are offering 60 places, we'll say, well, let's give it to the highest person, then the second highest, until we have got the 60th person on board. So the 60th person definitely would be someone above 340. So MBBS could be 340, and agriculture maybe we have given the scholarship at 301 because the interest was low, but definitely anyone that gets a score below 300 does not qualify for the National Topper Scholarship.
Just dispelling some fears or some misconceptions, there are a couple of sour grapes, like you said, that would say, oh, somebody else got it, but my child didn't, or my ward didn't. Nepotism, there's always, it's always flung about saying that, well, I know someone who knows someone and that's the reason why my child got through, or maybe you need to talk to this person and, you know, they can manipulate the system and get your child through.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that
something
possible?
you hear. If you're having difficulties, or maybe you can go and talk to this person. And you know, that sort of promotes, I guess, the idea that there's a nepotistic angle to this, right?
Again, I'd agree with that assessment, because even we have at times been faced with that flagship to say, well, because somebody is known to someone, they're getting a scholarship. Remember, there is no merit in that. As I've said, the online application system that we have designed is you put in your application, we get the result from Ministry of Education, we upload the results against your index numbers. The system identifies the top 950 students and then puts them in different categories. So there's no human interaction in terms of who's getting and who's not getting that. And the system has been designed in such a way that you can't override. For example, if there is somebody with 325 marks and has been logged for a category, none of the TSLB staff, including the CEO, can basically go and say, well, let's change something from the back end, because if you change, there's a clear audit track in terms of who logged into the application, on what day, and what time, and what did they change. So there is absolutely no escape in terms of someone manipulating the ranking now.
So in terms of accounting terms, that's verifiability. You come to the same conclusion.
Anyone can walk in on any particular day. Remember, we got a very open and transparent system. We get audited by very reputable audit firms. Anyone can walk in any particular day and say, well, give me a list of the 950 that you give the scholarships. Let's check the system.
Let's look at the numbers that have been coming in over the years, ever since this initiative has been put into place. Over the years, have you noticed a marked increase or decrease in certain areas, or overall?
There's been a significant increase. Let's say the schemes were rolled out in 2014. When we rolled out the scheme in 2014, there were 5,704 students. As of 31st July this year, the total number of students who have benefited under the National Toppers and the TEL scheme is 38,733. So if you look at in 6 years, we have gone up from 5,700 to 38,733 award recipients. As we speak, we already have 23,322 students who are actively studying at the universities now, and we have already about 14,000 applicants. So the numbers have grown, and what we are seeing now is on average every year, let's say we have already started the application process for 2020. As of midday today, the total number of applications that we have already received is 3,049. Right? And we are expecting that these numbers would grow around 7,500 by 15th of December. So there has been a huge increase in the number of students who have benefited from these schemes.
Stay with us. We'll come back from our next break into the final segment. Coming into our final segment, Mr. Maharaj, we spoke about priority areas earlier. What should students know about priority areas, or is there enough information online? Is there enough information out there for them to ensure that they apply to the right places so that they can guarantee themselves a spot?
Yes. The students have said they can log into our website, and our website has got data or information which are current, which means 100% accurate. We have been publishing the list of the priority areas, the number of awards in this category from June. Our first advertisement went out on 27th of June, and we are doing that on a regular basis. At the beginning of this year, we visited 160 schools Fiji-wide, high schools, which has got year 12 and year 13. And we were able to meet close to 10,600 students, whereby we advised them over a 2-hour period what the scholarships are, in which categories, where the employment market is moving, so that they don't just make decisions based on what we advertise, but also in terms of where the employability post-graduations are. So we have done whatever we could do. And as I've said, from tomorrow we'll also be hitting the airwaves in terms of advertisement, including all radio stations of FBC. And the advertisements will run from now till the 15th day of December. So the information is out there. And as I've said, if there are any students who are having any issues, remember our offices in Fiji, Lautoka, Suva and Lambasa are open from 8 to 5. Once we hit the peak period, we'll also be expanding our opening hours. So the facilities are there, opportunities are there. It's for them just to apply and get back to realize what their dreams are.
Now, if you're a student under TELS and you receive accommodation, I'm sure you're familiar with this. A lot of students that are under TELS have been complaining that the cost of living doesn't reflect the accommodation amount that they get. Let's say, for example, if you're living close to USP, you're a USP student, and you have to rent somewhere around the area. As someone who does rent around the area, I can tell you that it's really expensive for a student, and a lot of my colleagues and friends find it difficult to manage in that amount. Is there scope for communicating with the appropriate authority so that there's an improvement in this area?
Of course, the students can always raise their concerns or grievances. If you look at it for the last couple of years, prior to the budget announcement, even the Minister for Economy visits all universities to take the students' views on board as well. So there is absolutely nothing stopping them from either raising their concerns or grievances while the budget consultations by Ministry of Economy is undertaken, or even they can always write to the appropriate authorities. Currently, let's say if you look at the allowances, what we are doing is we are paying them rent allowance of $250 a month. We give them food allowance at the rate of $50 per week. If they are traveling and they require bus service, then we are paying them up to $30 a week. And apart from that, we give them $500 per semester for their incidental allowances. So based on our calculations, let's say, unless the students are renting on their own, let's say even at close to Suva, USP areas, if they are sharing a flat, they should be able to manage at $250, and if you've got $500 for a room, they would be able to manage. Now, we do understand that there are at times when students may have issues, and if you look at one of the new policies that was announced in the last budget is called the zoning policy. So what the zoning policy says is, if the program of study is offered by the university of their choice, but we're not restricting the student's choice here. So if you want to study at USP, let's say, and if USP Lambasa campus is offering that program, might as well you stay home and travel to class. So a couple of things would happen is, one, you'll be borrowing less, so it's better for the students. Two, you may be freeing up the accommodation facilities for those who genuinely need it, because if you can travel from home, and if you are also making a plan to rent, you basically may be depriving another student who may be, let's say, traveling from Sanganga, right? So the zoning policy, I'm sure, will ease this problem to some extent.
In terms of working with the relevant authorities, the FCCC has been very adamant on getting landlords to comply by registering. However, that's not always the case. And when a student needs to find accommodation for the purposes of their study, sometimes they may have to resort to renting in places that are untoward, maybe not registered, and they do not get maybe a proper contract or receipts for that. In those instances, what do they do? Is there a possibility of maybe their allowances getting an increase, or is there any possibility of them finding other solutions with the TELS?
Let's say at least up till 31st of July 2020, their allowances cannot mathematically be increased because the budget has been announced and the budgetary allocation has been given for the 12 months. But of course, if there is any avenues, then as I've said, if they can put in their proposals before or during the budget consultations, it could be assessed on merit, and on the need basis, it could be reviewed. I'm not saying that it will be reviewed, but on the merit and the required attention that it deserves.
Very final question, Mr. Maharaja. For those who have already graduated and are in the employment field and have not begun to make their repayments, what is the, I guess, enforcement mechanism there?
As I had said in one of the earlier segments, that now FRCS is legally mandated to do the recoveries. Now, I think those students who have graduated and they have been working and not repaying, they need to realize a couple of things. One, remember, their repayment will help the next Fijian. So they need to start paying back because it's an investment by the government, and you need to basically do your part in terms of repaying so that the next generation of Fijians also are having the same benefit as they had. Two, if they're working now, remember, there's absolutely no way they can be saying that they would not be identified, because as soon as your first FNPF is paid, as soon as your first tax lodgement is lodged, through your TIN number it could be tracked. So there is, I think, the need to be honest. I'm not saying the students have not been honest, because they have been progressively making payments, but there could be a couple of them that may have overlooked this, right? So it's time for them to basically consult TSLB or FRCS and do what they're legally required to.
Mr. Maharaj, thank you so much for joining us today. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for. And I'm sure that this was an opportunity for a lot of students to get some much needed updates and information. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
And that's all we have for you on the show tonight. We'll see you next week. Have a good evening.